PSA has the power.
Oh, shoot. All right.
PSA.
What is up, guys? It is Nick back with another video. I think, let me double check my cameras. I think we want it up here. We're going to put it up here, chat. We're going to do a reaction video to PSA getting exposed here. I've seen some streamers react to this. I've seen a little bit, but I haven't watched it fully, and I want to react to it. If you haven't seen this video, it is a must watch. We're going to watch it here together. Get my live reaction on some of my thoughts. But anyways, let's just let the video do the talking. And I'll try not to pause it a ton, but I might pause it a few times to talk. But here we go.
PSA has the power to turn a singular Pokemon card into a multi-million-dollar asset. When Logan Paul's ultra-rare Pikachu Illustrator was given a PSA 10 grade, it became worth over $16 million. A single grade point lower and the card's value drops to $1.4 million. But when one company has the ability to create or erase millions of dollars with a single number, there's bound to be corruption. And a recent pattern of major screw-ups has many people suspicious of PSA. They've authenticated cards that were altered to look perfect. Their grading system has been exposed as extremely inconsistent, and they've even admitted to straight up destroying high-value cards during their process. And those are just the mistakes that we can 100% prove. There are countless grading decisions that happen every single day that are losing people hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. Which is why when you dig deeper into PSA, the more insane it becomes that a multi-billion-dollar industry revolves around a tiny number on a piece of plastic.
Okay, that's like the craziest thing to think about, is that they have so much power to make or break so many financial things for people. If you send a card in and it's a 10 worth $1 million, but a 9's only worth like $100,000. Obviously, $100,000 is still a lot of money, but the little decision that they can make to completely change that is insane. And I know the video is going to dive deeper into this, but they don't only do it for the worth of the card. They also do it to kind of control the worth of the card in itself. Let's say, for example, the population, like there's only one PSA 10 Charizard. But if they start giving out 10s to everyone, the value of the cards are going to go down. So they know this going into it. Like, okay, there's only 3 or 1 of these cards in this grade. So they might grade it a 9 or something lower just to keep that one card super high valued. Okay. Now we keep going.
Before PSA became synonymous with corporate greed, they were actually providing an extremely consumer-friendly service. PSA, which stands for Professional Sports.
I'm about to vibe code a full e-commerce store using Wix Harmony.
Authenticator offered a universal standard to determine how much a card was worth. Think back to elementary school at the lunch table. Your friend has a bag of chips, and you're willing to give up your ding-dong in exchange for it. The chips aren't objectively more valuable than the ding-dong, but if both of you are satisfied with the trade, then it really doesn't matter. Sports cards and trading cards used to be the same way. Maybe I wanted your Charizard card and you wanted my Pikachu card. We'd just swap them and be done with it. But eventually, how rare the cards were became a factor to consider in the trade. All of those factors is what PSA considered to determine how much a card was worth, which resulted in people paying big money for cards in all different niches. PSA essentially created the industry standard guide.
Okay, this would be a little bit better if, for example, like, I don't even know, like them being able to control what it is graded is just like the craziest thing
of what matters when buying or selling cards. In a close inspection, a trained PSA grader validates a card's authenticity.
Also, if someone, sorry I keep pausing, if this guy right here, PSA, is grading it, he grades it a 10, then you give that exact same card to someone else to grade. They might grade it a 9. So it all also depends too on which person you get grading your card. Also, the other thing on top of that is, let's say you send in 10 first edition Charizards, right? And you have one person grading it. They're going to grade the first 3, let's say 10, 10. They're all 10s, technically speaking, let's say. and they grade the first 3 all 10s, and then they're like, okay, I can't give these all 10s. You know, there's 10 of them right here. This is going to lower the market value of them. Or maybe they're just looked at the card enough times to be like, okay, well, this one's a little bit different. Maybe there is something, this one does have a little something wrong with it. Or just by looking at the card, they start to notice more things. And they psychologically can't be like, okay, not all these cards are perfect. There has to be one that has something wrong with it. But those are many things that the flaws in people grading cards can really have, and the effect on the market and the growth of the corruption that's just stacked over the years from PSA.
Ensuring that it is officially licensed merchandise and not a knockoff. They assess any potential damage such as rips, tears, scuffs, folds, and finally they give a grade to the card's overall condition on a 1 to 10 scale. And at the end they carefully encapsulate the card in a protective case to preserve its condition with a label displaying its name and official PSA grade. Before PSA was rotting the industry from its core, it was actually meant to preserve the integrity of it. But as their power and influence grew, they started moving away from being a humble service for hobbyists and developing into a corporation fully fixated on profits. PSA expanded their company beyond just grading cards. They integrated with eBay to create the PSA Vault, which helps store, list, sell, and ship trading cards for their customers. So if you wanted to sell your recently graded card, you could have them take care of the entire selling process from start to finish with little effort. PSA even offered a buyback service where they would purchase the card directly after grading, and some interpret this as kind of a conflict of interest. You're handing a company your card, they're deciding how much it's worth, and then they're offering to buy it from you themselves.
So what if they graded a 9 and it's really a 10? They buy it back. Let's say you sell it to them. They buy it back. They crack it, regrade it at 10, and sell it for more.
If they plan on reselling the card for a profit, they have every incentive to convince you it's worth a little less than it actually is. It's like when Rick from Pawn Stars calls in one of his buddies to tell you what your rare artifact is worth, and almost every time, it's worth way less than what you thought it was. From there, PSA's parent company, which is confusingly called Collectors, also acquired rival grading services Beckett and SGC, getting them closer to becoming a monopoly. Today, PSA and its sister companies take up 80% of the total market, with PSA accounting for a whopping 72%. And that dominance comes with an immense responsibility. The trading card market is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and basically every collector on the planet relies on PSA's labels to determine that each card they received was authentic and in perfect condition. And when PSA makes mistakes, they aren't just minor disputes. They have the potential to be catastrophic errors that can bankrupt a collector. But before we get into that, we all live busy lives. There are so many things to do, and it never feels like there is enough time in the day. You should probably go get that yearly checkup to make sure you're in good health, but you don't have time to sit on hold all day. Today's sponsor, ZocDoc, makes the process a 1952 Stan Musial baseball card sold for $2,800. It had slight imperfections, including a black dot on the border, as well as a few small scuffs on his jersey. All things considered, the card was still in great condition, and received a PSA grade 9. 7 months later, another copy of the card was sold, this time a PSA grade 10, for a price of $28,100. The problem is, these were the same exact card. Natural markings on the back of both were identical, meaning that someone had covered up its imperfections and resubmitted it to PSA, got a higher grade, and made tens of thousands of dollars. PSA is supposed to inspect every card closely before giving it a grade. It checks for scratches, scuffs, and imperfections, but it also ensures that the card is both authentic and unaltered. Like when you and I look at a PSA 8, 9, or 10, we just kind of say, yeah, I mean, it looks perfect. But PSA's job is to notice the tiny things that we never would. Maybe someone repainted a tiny white chip on the edge, or they trimmed a fraction of a millimeter off the border, or they managed to fix a crease that used to be there. And even still, you might wonder what the big deal is. I mean, if a card can be restored to pristine genuine condition, then why should it matter if it was original or not? Well, it's because the history of a card is a major factor in its value. To see a card preserved for almost 70 years without a single flaw doesn't just make it worth more money, it's also just objectively cool. And this is not just true for cards, it's really true for about anything that is rare. The flowing hair silver dollar sold for $10 million in 2013. That's because this coin was the first dollar coin issued by the United States federal government in 1794. Somehow, someway, this little coin was preserved for 220 years. If nobody cared about preserving anything that was rare, then we'd all just buy one-to-one bootlegs. Authenticity matters, and PSA was meant to ensure all aspects of a card were authentic, but they messed up too many times to count. A Billy Maloney card from the early 1900s was purchased for $81 before being altered, regraded, and sold for a $900 profit. A 1952 Mickey Mantle card was altered and resold for $14,800. Ironically, a separate Stan Musial card from 1948 had its edges trimmed and sold for a nearly $2,000 profit. By 2019, hundreds of examples of altered cards that PSA had improperly graded had piled up, culminating in a class action lawsuit. The lawsuit went further than accusing PSA of making a few mistakes. It argued that trained graders should have been able to recognize the alteration and alleged that PSA knowingly allowed them to enter the market regardless. The situation became too large for PSA.
You enjoy cooking?
No, but I do it.
And if I told you that you can have award-winning chefs prepare your meals every
PSA to ignore, and they announced an internal
I think it's like, it's just so crazy to think that people were able to just do that, and the fact that they
investigation into the matter. Now, to be fair, PSA grades millions of cards every year, and these alterations were done specifically by the seller to deceive trained authenticators into getting a higher grade. It is possible that these specific instances were genuine mistakes, and someone just figured out how to beat the authenticators. But whether PSA approved the cards knowingly or made a genuine...
Then that defeats the whole purpose of their business, you know? Like, if there's something that people are doing to figure out how to get around it, they need to, like, do something to figure out how to stop it. And what surprised me is, like, this stuff is, like, I feel like thrown under the rug and not really super known by many people because people still trust them so much, even though they do
mistake, the result for buyers was the same. Altered cards entered the market with legitimate grades that people thought were original and could be sold for far more money than they were worth, which made people start to wonder if that little number in the corner could really be trusted. Sometimes customers are disappointed with the grade their card gets. Maybe they thought it was a perfect 10, but PSA found a small imperfection that bumped it down to a 9. The customer now has two choices. They can accept the result and sell the card, or they can resubmit it to PSA and hope for a better result.
Which you can, because if a different person grades it, it's going to get a different
Pokemon
result.
card collector and YouTuber Pokemon Steven submitted approximately 10,000 cards to be graded by PSA over the past couple of years. A little under 200 of his cards received unsatisfactory gradings. He believed that these cards were actually 10s, so he decided to resubmit them on the off chance that someone had made a mistake, and the results were shocking.
81 PSA 10s from the regrade experiment.
Also, Ludwig just did this where he bought cards, and some of them were graded, some were just raw. Bought cards, sent them into Tag, CGC, and PSA. And I think only a couple of them had the same grades from each of them. And some of the PSA graded cards that he had bought when he had sent them to PSA, I don't think any of them had the same grade as when they were submitted from both. So there's a lot of inconsistency with grading, which is why I think Tag might be the
189 cards in
superior
total,
grading-
so
superior grading company, because Tag is AI grading. Theoretically, if you send that same card in multiple times, if the AI is grading it, it should be the exact same.
108 cards did not make the cut.
81 of the resubmitted cards were bumped up from a PSA 9 to a PSA 10. That's 42%. But he had not changed the card at all. The corners, the art, the surface were all exactly the same as when he submitted them the first time. The only thing that changed was the grade itself. And as discussed prior, the difference between these two grades can mean the difference of hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. What one inspector views as a 9, the other may view as a 10, and it's starting to seem like the only difference is how lucky you are when your card is being reviewed. PSA's grading system is supposed to be an objective measurement of the card's condition, but as more controversies pile up, the grading seems subjective. Just goes to show that people are insane for paying such a massive premium for 10s. PSA is a huge scam, but resubmitting the card could also hurt its value. Another collector submitted over 100 cards to be regraded, 19 were given higher grades, but 34 of them were actually given a worse grade. But why does this happen? I mean, the rules are clear enough. 4 perfectly sharp corners, full original gloss, no stains or no scratches, with a slight allowance for printing imperfections. The problem is that a human grader still has to decide what counts as perfect. Maybe there's a small mark in the artwork that one grader notices while the other one doesn't. What one grader sees as a printing imperfection, another may view as an unnatural defect that bumps its grade down. So now, submitting to PSA is like gambling, especially when you consider the fees associated with this process. Submitting to PSA for grading costs $25 per card plus shipping, and they do offer slight discounts for bulk submission.
Right now, PSA grading, look at this. It's like $80. Wait, where is it? Look at this. Regular $80 per card. And Express is $150. Yeah, it's insane. That is absolutely insane.
But think about it, if you get a low grade, your card could be worth less than 25 bucks.
So yeah,
meaning
if you send a card in, I heard it also, my friend said he's been waiting 7 months for his cards to come back. But imagine spending $80. That card at a minimum needs to be worth more than $80 minus whatever you also would if you paid for it. So let's say I bought this card for $30, $40, right? And I go and grade it, spend $70. $30 plus $70 is $100. So this card needs to be worth more than $100 after grading it to break even, which I guess in turn is kind of like their thing of like, don't submit crappy cards. Which I guess is just their way of trying to limit what cards people send in. But that also stacks with, okay, them not being consistent with giving 9s and 10s, because one grader might grade it a 10, one might grade it a 9. And that's also too where a lot of the inconsistencies
costs more to authenticate and grade than it's actually worth. However, if your card is worth more, PSA will charge you insane amounts of money to
Also, yes, they do that too. It says if your card it goes up in value because they give it a 10, you have to pay more.
do the exact same grading as a worthless card. Like Nico, who submitted his rare Mickey Mouse card that was worth $20,000 to PSA, only for them to charge him $1,000 for his perfect 10 grade.
Yeah, that's actually insane. That's like
Or Scruffy, who was charged $150 for a 10 grade 2021 Pokemon Sword and Shield Evolving Skies, and $600 for a 9 grade 2002 Charizard Reverse Foil. There's also John, who was told by PSA his card was worth $25,000, which is why he needed to pay them $1,000 to authenticate it, but then his card only sold for half the value they claimed it was worth. And no, they didn't give him a $500 discount and say, oops, we messed up. And he still made a great profit, but remember that the grading process for all of these cards is
being able to charge someone for a part of what the card becomes worth, because it's kind of it's honestly more volatile than the stock market, because cards is very subjective to the buyer. Let's say there's one person out there that'll pay $100 for this card right here. But that's the only guy in the world that'll pay $100. Everyone else, market value, will pay $30, $40, Like, but the one guy who really, really loves this card will pay $100. And if there's that one sale of $100, PSA will see that and be like, oh, yeah, that's a $100 card. Grading it, we're going to charge you extra to grade this. But in reality, that was the only guy that would pay that much. So it's like, really, it's not worth that much to that next person. The gap between the person who loves it the most, paying $100, compared to the next person that loves it after them will only pay 60, 50, 40, whatever it is, isn't as much. So being able to put a price on what a card is worth is not a thing that is really like reliable, I guess, in a sense, because it's going to be worth something. It's going to be worth more to one person than it is to other people.
Exactly the same. And you don't know what they are going to charge you until after they have already done the service. This has led some collectors to accuse PSA of intentionally having inconsistent grading so people will just keep submitting their cards for additional gradings. This is unlikely considering they've been shown to both overgrade and undergrade cards. Then again, there are stories that make it easy to understand why some collectors still remain skeptical.
If it's like an insanely rare card, like a first edition Charizard or some of these really old baseball cards, if there's not a lot of cards in circulation in the grade 10, obviously it's gonna matter a lot more when grading it higher.
The most notable example of this is when a collector named Preston submitted 30 separate Pikachu Zekrom GX cards to PSA for grading. He anticipated that most of them would be perfect 10s, but he was shocked to discover that none of them received a perfect grade, with the vast majority of them receiving PSA 9s. In spite of his disappointment, Preston opted to sell the cards through PSA's buyback service. However, he kept records of the serial numbers on his cards and searched them later online to discover that 11 of them had been listed as perfect 10s. Around this time, a PSA 9 of this exact card was going for around $41, while a PSA 10 was nearly $200, meaning that
Look at the card market. Look at the card market. Oh my, how do I go back? The card.
Okay, great. Wait, were you even listening? You haven't taken a single
$41.
The card market, July 2026, $750. That is how crazy Pokemon cards are right now. But yeah, from a 9 to a 10, PSA bought it back, cracked it, and regraded it.
While a PSA 10 was nearly $200, meaning that PSA bought them from him as a 9 and sold them as a 10, and Preston missed out on around $1,500 for all 11 cards. And this highlights the conflict of interest I mentioned before. The only people who can change a grade are PSA themselves, so if they are authenticating and buying and selling,
they're basically going to grade more 9s and hope that people sell it to them so they can crack and grade it.
Cards, they could theoretically change the grade of any card to maximize their personal profits on the sale.
As you can see, this is a legendary collection reverse PSA 10 Mankey that's listed on
eBay. They can
basically
go online, PSA, and buy every single 9, crack it, regrade it at 10, and then sell it for more.
By PSA themselves. But if this card is a PSA 10, then why does the back look like this? Because how are they listing a card that looks like this as a PSA 10 on eBay through the PSA eBay account?
They need to get sued more. It's all a scam. I hate that PSA is the one that got popular. However, PSA offered a different explanation. Supposedly, someone at PSA had seen Preston's original post on Twitter. They personally believed that the initial grading was too harsh and conducted a secondary manual review, resulting in updated gradings after Preston had already accepted their offer, which is shady. They conveniently realized that they messed.
If someone does that, they should reach back out and be like, hey, these are 10s, would you like to get these back, or we'll give you the full amount.
Up only after they already bought the cards from him and resold them for a profit. Luckily for Preston, his story got a lot of traction online, and he claims that they privately rectified the situation with him, which I would hope means that they gave him the money he deserves for the cards he unknowingly undersold to them. But that still doesn't feel like a satisfying conclusion, and it still didn't explain why the cards were undergraded in the first place. A fellow collector claimed that cards tend to be undergraded undergraded by PSA when they receive bulk quantities of the same card. I guess the logic is that when you look at the same card over and over again, you maybe start to see imperfections that aren't there. Or maybe the same person is just going over all of them and is like, surely they can't all be 10s, so here's a 9.
Exactly
but
what I
obviously
said.
that would be corrupt and unethical business practices. But most importantly, PSA did not make the situation right with Preston until after he went viral on social media and gave them bad publicity. Was Preston the only person this has ever happened to? Or was he just lucky enough to get attention online and put pressure on PSA to pay him what they owed? But one of the most insane controversies that gained traction online was when PSA admitted they damaged someone's extremely rare card, and many saw this as the final nail in the coffin for their reputation. A man named Brian revealed that his PSA 10 Pokemon card was severely damaged while getting it reholdered by PSA, bumping it all the way down to a grade 6. The card was a sky-splitting Deoxys, an extremely rare card released in limited quantities in 2004 and never printed in English. There were very few copies like this and in his condition, making Brian's card almost impossible to replace. Now, Brian was getting his card reholdered. Basically what this means is he already submitted it before and it got a 10, but he was paying them to crack open the old plastic case and seal the exact same card into a brand new holder. Collectors do this all the time if the slab gets scratched, cracked, or it just looks old. A fresh holder can make an expensive card easier to sell because buyers know the case is brand new and the card had recently been inspected. The problem is that the moment PSA cracks the case open, they're handling one of the rarest cards in the world, and if anything goes wrong, the damage is permanent. PSA acknowledged that they had damaged the card and offered to reimburse Brian the full market value, which they determined to be $20,000. He wasn't happy with this considering that the same card had sold for up to $45,000 around the same time, with others saying it was worth even more. Multiple people have told me that the Deoxys is $60,000 plus, and I personally have an offer over that. PSA fixed this issue. PSA got the $20,000 figure.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough situation because it all comes down to, again, like, card value is so subjective. If you put a card up for sale, even if it's on auction, let's say, and let's say tons of people see it, but the one person who's going to pay $60,000 for that card doesn't see it, doesn't buy it, and it ends up selling for $45,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is. It's so hard to know exactly what a card is worth, because the only way to tell is like if every single person in the world sees it and you find whoever's going to pay the most for it. But the odds that every single person that wants that card and you finding that person that is willing to pay the most for that card is just like insanely hard to always do. So you're really never, even if like that card is worth, one person will pay that $60,000. What are the odds that he's actually going to sell it to that person that's going to pay $60,000, you know? So it's a tough situation.
Here by averaging all of the recent sales of that same card. And this just seemed like a slap in the face because at best they're offering half and at worst a third of what it's actually worth. But the problem is they caused the loss of the card and then gave themselves the authority to decide how much that loss was worth. And rather than accepting their deal, Brian took to the internet. Once again, the community was furious. And this specific situation ramped up to a whole new level once Moist Critical made a video about it.
This is where it gets extreme.
I just built a budgeting app with Base 44.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
Extremely spicy.
It also sucks that this guy already had the card graded and all they had to do was put it in a new case. It's like, I would not want a card just in a new case. Like, trusting a company like that to just take my card out and put it in a new case. I know it looks better, but like, I would just leave it.
That card sold only a couple of weeks ago by PSA. And this is where it gets a little conspiratorial, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. There are people that are speculating that they didn't actually damage his card when reholdering it. The encapsulation process, it's a psyop, it's not real. What they're thinking might have happened is PSA, when reholdering that PSA 10 Deoxys that was submitted, they took it and then sold it themselves, and then instead gave him a 6, saying that it was damaged and now it's, you know, it's down to a 6.
I guess PSA now stands for Pro Scam Artists. Critical brought awareness to this dispute far outside the card collecting community, putting PSA under more pressure than ever before. Brian announced they had come.
The biggest thing that they would scam on is buying 9s back from people, or just buying 9s in general and regrading them 10s is like the biggest thing. But also they control the population of how many like rare cards are able to be a 10. And then there's also just the inconsistencies that come with grading cards from person to person.
To an agreement that he was satisfied with, indicating that he was compensated for the proper market value of his card. By this point, the pattern becomes a bit too familiar. PSA rejected a complaint, the collector went public on the internet, and then the company changed their mind after the story went viral. There are dozens of other examples of PSA destroying their customers'
I
card.
wonder why the people aren't able, that didn't say like, oh, this is like what they reached out to me about, this is how much they paid me. I wonder if they make them sign some disclosure thing or something, because I think that's kind of weird. Oh yeah, I was confiscated, and I wonder if they tell them not to say exactly what, or the email they sent.
And you have to wonder if these individuals were ever given proper compensation. Probably not, because a massive YouTuber didn't make a video about them. And now I'm just genuinely curious if anyone watching has ever had this happen to them. Like, you submitted a card to PSA and you know for a 100% fact that they messed up your card and then sent it back but hoped that you'd never notice. Comment below if that happened. PSA's grade is supposed to be a symbol of reliability and prestige, but these days their reputation isn't much better than a sketchy pawn shop, and yet people are still sending in millions of cards to PSA every single year. But why? Well, the thing is, most collectors don't continue to use PSA because they trust them, they continue because they have no other realistic option. There are other companies that do gradings, but a card with a PSA label can sell for far more than the same card graded by a competitor. Leaving PSA for another authenticator would significantly cut down the overall value of someone's collection. And with the prices for some of these cards, we're talking about millions of dollars in value right down the drain. Boycotting won't work because all collectors would have to do it together. The market has decided that PSA is the gold standard, and it's almost impossible to go against what the market wants. As long as buyers seek out PSA graded cards, sellers will continue to sell them, which means that they will just have to deal with whatever nonsense comes with working with PSA. This is why monopolies are supposed to be illegal. But above all else, PSA is just another example of how any hobby or niche eventually gets hijacked and exploited by corporations. The same thing happened with sneakers. Any regular person who wants to occasionally, maybe once a year or every other year, buy a nice pair of sneakers has to deal with insane price gouging, unavailability of sizes because collectors or resellers pay thousands of dollars just to let a pair collect dust on a shelf. Shoes turned into a status symbol, and now it's trading cards. Actually playing with your Pokemon card could scratch the artwork, and wearing your sneakers could scuff them up, which will devalue them, which is ironic because most people buy nice things because they want to actually use nice things, but the only way to protect the value is to avoid enjoying it for what it is. And unfortunately, no hobby is safe from this. It's only going to get worse. Once people begin to put a price on their favorite pastime, they make way for opportunists to take advantage of the hobby and get rich. PSA isn't just a tragic story of an innocent hobby being corrupted, it is a reminder that nothing you love is safe or sacred anymore. And PSA isn't the only business that's built an empire by telling people what their collectibles are worth. Pawn Stars made a fortune with these same questionable tactics. But check out this video to hear that story.
That's crazy. Well, that is gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I grabbed my blanket during that video.
I started a business to give old clothes a new life.
Pause that. There we go. That's gonna be it for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. That video is actually super crazy. That is part of the reason why I've never sent any cards into PSA, because I've honestly never trusted any grading system. The one that I might trust would be Tag, just because they have AI grade it, and they also send back a full report when you do grade, versus PSA and CGC. When you grade with them, like, they just send your card back with a grade. They don't even say what grade it, like why it's graded that way. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. I do want to grade a lot of my cards, mostly my modern ones, but I just, two reasons why I don't send them in. I don't really trust them, and also my friend sent his cards in. It's been taking 7 months and he hasn't gotten them back yet. So I don't want to also send my cards away for that long. But eventually, one day, I feel like once everything kind of gets figured out, maybe people start using tag, or maybe PSA starts using AI to grade cards or something. Once it kind of figures out, and maybe the Pokemon market will slow down again, and grading will only take like a month or so, then maybe I'll send cards in. But that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.